Hello, all, and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Rose. Today is a special treat as well, non sponsored, but today I get to test out the new Sharpie drawing markers, courtesy of my father, who uses them for other materials, more like metallics and such. Wanted to see how I like these markers, and I was highly curious myself. I grew up with my first real strong set of markers being between Copic and a ton of Sharpies. So, color me curious. I wanted to see how they work. They claim to work on dark surfaces, metal, canvas. The big claim is they are highly pigmented enough for dark surfaces, which is a huge deal as it is not a easy feat to compete with when you don't have a lot that works on just solid like black paper or black or dark backgrounds. So I hope to here to give an honest review of how I feel about these by each experiment I go through, and I hope this helps you. We start off by me showing off the markers a little bit as well as getting a closer look at the nibs. I had a chance to test out both the brush thin tip and the wide tip. I will say if you are looking to do more backgrounds, it's the wide tip is not as like clean wide as you'd think like a Copic marker or that kind of thing. So I will say it'll take a little bit longer to do so, but otherwise it was pretty clean. I liked how it compared to some of my other branded ones, so that made me rather happy to know that at least clean enough. And there's not too strong of a smell on them. They say they're scentless, but there's a little bit of that Sharpie smell, so keep that in mind when you are using these. As for the testing subjects today, we have a couple of things I picked up or pulled out from my collection. We have the keychains, which it claims to work on glass and plastics and whatnot. Black canvas, as it says that, for dark surfaces. Some black paper, as I figured it's a nice way to test it on there. And of course, my classic white multimedia, my normal stuff I use. Just to see how well it works in all basic use, blending, and whatnot. We are starting off with the black canvas, as you can see here. I picked a very simple doodle. There's going to be a theme with today's pictures, by the way, so don't be surprised. So, and all I had with me today was a pencil, my general black Sharpie for outline if I needed to, eraser, and a extra lead. Because I mainly wanted to make the markers do the work. So in this case, as I'm doing a bit of research. There we go. So, yes, I just decided to do some basic outlining just to see how clean it would work on the canvas and test the initial claim of it working on dark surfaces. Which, as we all know as artists, we've played with, gel pens and whatnot, not everything works on dark surfaces or it's not as bright as we would like. So, and I would love to be able to draw my black paper more, so had high hopes for at least this part. Which, as you can see, I had just started, and look how pigmented that is. It was interesting to use. I was using the wide tip this time, which I will say the wide tip was easier to guide for outlines, oddly enough, than the brush tip, the fine tip, only because the brush kind of moves around a bit, and if you're not good with guiding a brush, it might get real messy real quick if you don't know. I even played with the different colors to kind of try the shading. Which, in this, as you can see the colors, it's the exact same 12 on each. All those, plus a black, white, and gray in the fine and the thicker tip ones. And so otherwise, yeah, they were pretty easy to use. Not too uncomfortable with the hands. I just kind of see how it shows up, trying as many colors as I can, but I really wanted the black canvas to really do the work in the background and see just how potent the markers were on it. And at this point, even with a little bit of that pink blending on top, I was pretty impressed. And this is what I mean by as I start using this. I had a little bit of an interesting time here because I can use brush tip. But when you're doing fine line work, you obviously want to sometimes have a still like tip to your marker or anything like that to really make sure you can get those fine line details. But I'm sure with practice it can be done like anything with calligraphy. But as these are supposed to be like children's based easy kind of markers, maybe not the easiest for outline, but they had high potential and they were very pigmented. And now you see here, we are going to be with the acrylic keychain. I couldn't find anything glass I liked. And we're just going to do the exact same design, except the plan is to transfer it onto this and see how it goes. The one huge thing here I found was that it was much slower to dry on this. So I tried my best to not have the colors blend together, which on the smooth surfaces, they will do that. So if you're using this on anything besides like metal, as they kind of say, this is likely what they meant by may not be the most sturdy on non-metallic surfaces, but it does work very smooth. And if you manipulate on the plastic enough, you might be able to do a little bit of blending, much like a watercolor on accident. So that's cool. As we'll let that dry a bit. This is where I kind of have fun. I hardly get to use this paper. I've had this for like over 5 years now. We had to figure out what to draw, and it was decided to, since as it's been kind of on my mind lately, I did get some plushes lately of these characters. Some of you will likely be familiar with, and I just really wanted to draw them. The characters being the Plague Doctor and Plague Nurse. They're from like the Squish, like kind of Squishmallows kind of site. I absolutely love them. So I'm like, all right, let's. I'm kind of crazy on the brain right now for these, so let's just draw them. And so I'm just doing some basic outline to figure out where I want the markers to go. Now, the task I wanted for this was bleedability with paper and how clean is it with paper. Because some markers bleed all the way through. Sometimes they don't blend well. Some stay wet a bit longer. You know, if you've worked with markers, you kind of know not all markers are created equal, even the marker world for artists. So I really just wanted to get that set up. Which I will say after the last two, I had in this case, like, I was pretty impressed by the colors. So I was really excited to see how it would look trying to draw on this paper, if it made a difference as opposed to the canvas. Because I will say, I noticed it on the canvas initially. There was some lines, and it took a couple of layers, much like a kind of like a think a cheaper acrylic paint. But you have to put a couple of layers to make it look fuller. So that's something to keep in mind for even the solid. It's not as thick. You kind of have to do some layers and be kind of careful about that. But otherwise, I do love how this turns out. At least for the outline, it's sometimes you just gotta get that drawing itch out of your head, you know? But yes, as I was saying, so as we should be close to it. It's pretty simple outline because I didn't want to do too much at once for the markers. I just wanted to see how clean the lines were and how pigmented it was on this paper. Starting off with, unfortunately, her color of her scarf is actually a tan or a beige. A negative is if you want more colors, you're not going to get in this collection as of this moment. So, just trying to work with what we have here. I decided to use a gray, as it would kind of be kind of cute with the black, pink, and white kind of vibe. I did try to like blend a little something in there, which ultimately ends up being more effective when I just outlined it with black. There really wasn't much I can do with that shadow due to limited colors. But in terms of this, I will say I was pretty happy with, for the most part, how it went down. It was that same smudginess. It didn't quite, unlike the alcohol markers, which kind of can blend smoothly once you kind of get it down. It like naturally does it. These, just like acrylic paint, as I said earlier, you can see the lines, and those lines don't go away, and the paper kind of absorbs some of it, enhancing those lines. So I could have obviously go back and flatten that out by doing another layer. But part of it is also maybe using it to your advantage and using it as a shading with them on the black paper. So it wasn't all bad. It's just kind of how you manipulate them. And of course, as you can see, I'm just trying to work with what colors to use as replacement, since in his case also he's a darker gray for his headpiece, so I kind of had to be creative. But otherwise, I was pretty happy with how they were working. This is when I started just using the black and the gray a bit to kind of start. In this case, I had to work with negative space because obviously, since he's mainly got a black cloak and hat, I can't use a black outline on this. So I figure I do everything in the alternating black to white outline, in which I started getting more of the hang of the fine tip marker, the brush tip, and it does work after you kind of get used to it a bit. And it really, I mean, that color is just so smooth and pigmented. I had no issue. And the fact is, as much as I technically messed up the mask on his side, as you'll see later as I'll go back with the white, I'm easily, with these colors, able to go through and go over it with it and actually smooth that line out, which is a huge plus for markers. That normally would be a, well, SOL situation, but I was able to fix it to more what I wanted. So, huge plus for the markers. So, overall, great test. Uh, I would say besides the smudging and maybe working on it to your advantage, yeah. Now, as you can see, we go back to the keychain after it's dried. As it was still kind of wet there, I'm trying my best to do a very same thing with that little faint white gray shading, black outline. It was very smooth, goes cleanly on top of it, so great for layering, which is great for harder surfaces. And even the canvas is dried nice and well, so the experiment had gone well at that point. This is where I did it more of a test to what I normally do. When I work with markers, I love the kind of the watercolor effect you can have with markers. I just love that wet effect, the way that things kind of smear. And markers are great for that. You can really manipulate it in the same way. In this case, I wanted to give it a full test of a full uh, blended, the lines, the detail kind of a piece, more to what I would be doing. Because if they're drawing markers, so may as well put it to what I would do with my any other markers I have in my possession. As you can see, I'm just doing some basic outline. There's not a lot of outlining to be done with this piece. I mainly just needed the center, and as like the others, the markers are doing the heavy work. I did use this as a reference picture to kind of mess with this. Just to kind of, like, in a lot of these are all doodles. Either I do not own these contents. It was either the freebie content that you can use, so that's like watermark free, just have fun with it, or characters that do exist. It's just purely inspiration. And just seeing what my brain works, how my brain can use it. In this case, we are working with obviously a shape of a skull. I did say there was a theme today. That was not intentional, but it's me. I can't really be shocked by that. So I'm just sort of trying to outline outline the piece and start to work with the main thing with markers that people use them for is, well, the blending. It's not a colorless blender. You get exactly what you get. And it has a very acrylic, it's like acrylic ink feeling. So I kind of try to blend with it to see if I can get to do what I wanted, which there was a struggle. because part of it is like once you start even blending and you do get to do so, it takes a little bit for the color to kind of come out of the marker you're using. So, not the best. It'd be the colorless blender. Maybe I'll try it another time with them. Could be easier, but in terms of essentially wet paint blending, which is really more what it felt like, it worked. As you can see, I'm trying my best to now instill that layer of white so I can start really going for some in-depth shading. Which, yeah, okay. Um, it does work, and when you get them in just the right spot, and also work quickly, because it does absorb into the paper, and it kind of messes with the ink on the pen. You can do, as you can kind of start seeing, there's some actual like signs of some shading going around as I'm trying to give it like the not realism of a skull, but inspired by it. It's more inspired by a pop art thing, so let's at least give it some touch of that like skull detailing. Mostly using this is me just mainly using the wide tip at this point because I just wanted to fill it in, not so much define the details yet. Because that blending was, as you can see, as I keep going back and forth there, just trying to get that right color. But overall, like, this is where I start to see, okay, you can blend with these, and it is possible. You just have to kind of manipulate it quite a bit and use that wet paint texture to your advantage. Which, unlike normal brush, it's obviously a bit different, but can be done as I get closer to fine lining the piece and putting in the details I want. It really begins to show. This is where I start using the fine line pens to really start doing more of the pop art effect that I was hoping for. And for the most part, this is where that tip does actually work rather well because it was really great at getting these lines that I wanted. And it was just very smooth. I'd be more wondering if I had done something like an eye or something that's more needs more finesse with those little tiny details for me. Is those little tiny like levels of specs. But overall, for this kind of loose together piece with more focus on general like rough brush strokes, I'm pretty impressed by it. And at the end of it, I can say that marker wise, out of on a scale of 1 to 10, honestly, probably about a 7. I'm not a huge fan of how messy they are in terms of if on paper you can see the brush strokes and whatnot. They don't dry as flat, and it takes a bit of more effort than like my normal stuff. However, pigment 10 out of 10. The fact that it showed up on black paper without any no base coat needed, no nothing, it just did its job. It did happen to blend enough that you can play with it. And overall, I would say, yeah, if you are interested in these markers, just keep in mind that for the pack of the 12 of small and thick, there is it's about $40. So that is something to keep in mind. You also have to keep in mind that there, in terms of on the plastic, as you saw there, that did scrape off. Not the best. Apparently, it's better for metal, but if you want to work on rocks and whatnot, there's a chance it might scrape off. So, not as durable. And you may have to do a couple of layers with the stuff on paper and even the canvas to get that clean if you want like a really clean line. But if you're malleable with it and you can maybe use it, or you figure out how to use it to your advantage, that line can be your shading as well. So, based on your art style, It all could work. I would recommend these if you want to try them out. But as I said, keep everything I've said in mind. Not a lot of options. Not the general typical like acrylic, well, uh, ink markers that dry smooth. Overall, not bad. We'll likely use these for other future projects. I hope this has helped you, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching.